last class we had discussed with started off with the rights of the buyer or under the Sale of Goods Act. Today we'll be discussing about the duties of the buyer. The first one is duty to accept the goods and pay for them in exchange for possession. Right now, because buyer and seller, it is a mutual agreement on what type of goods they want to buy or sell, in what quantity, in what price, everything is mutually agreed. It is the duty of the buyer to accept the goods and pay for them in exchange for possession. So it is the duty and an obligation for a buyer to make the payment of goods to the seller. Second one, duty to apply for delivery. So if the buyer wants a specific delivery either to go down or to the company directly, etc., it is his duty to inform or ask the seller to send the goods to certain go down or certain address, right, to deliver the goods in time to a particular location. Number 3, duty to demand delivery at a reasonable hour, because buyer will definitely have, if he's a company or a storekeeper, that there's going to be business hours. Definitely the shop is going to be open only for a certain number of hours. The seller can't deliver the goods in the midnight or in the early morning, correct? There is a specific time limit for which the seller has to deliver the goods and the buyer has to receive the delivery of the goods, right? So again, the third point is, it is the duty of the buyer to demand the delivery of the goods at a reasonable hour. So he can inform the seller that these are the hours, working hours of the company. So within these hours, I want you to deliver the goods to this location. Number 4, duty to accept the installment delivery and pay for it. Now, in case the buyer cannot pay the full price of the goods to the seller, in that case, buyer can opt for installment method, right? Installment, so you make a down payment and then you make a series of fixed payments over the period of time. Is that clear? That is called as installment payment method. So, accept the installment delivery and pay for it. Now, either if he is asking for installment payment, or let's say the buyer does not want all the stock of goods to come at one shot, maybe there's not sufficient space in the godown or etc. In the same case, even for as he asks for payment, he can also ask for the installment delivery. That means what? Batch by batch you can send or deliver the goods to my godown. Is that clear? Maybe they have an agreement, every 2 weeks once you will supply the goods to me, right? So that is what? Installment delivery. I'm not sending all the 100 kgs of goods that you ordered or mutually agreed upon one shot to the godown, but instead the buyer says, please deliver it to me in installment basis. I first need 20 kgs of 20 units of those goods on the 10th of the month, and then next on the 20th of the month, that is with 10 days gap, send me another 20 units of goods. Is that clear? So that is called as installment delivery. As we ask for payment, the buyer also has a duty to accept it in case it comes in installment basis and accordingly arrange for the payment. Number 5, duty to take a risk for deterioration in the course of transit. So in case it is the agreement between the buyer and the seller who takes up the responsibility of the goods until it reaches the doorstep of the buyer, it is whose responsibility? If the buyer takes the responsibility or the seller takes responsibility, it is the duty to take the risk of deterioration in the course of transit. That means during the travel, during the goods are being shipped or being roadways or airways or any kind of transport, the goods are being moved from one place to another. If the good damages or defaults or deteriorates or damages, especially if you're talking about the fast moving consumer goods, right? If you're talking about vegetables or fruits, they deteriorate or they get destroyed or lose its purpose very soon, right? It has to be fast moving. It has to quickly move from location to location or to into the market for it to be resold, etc. So buyer has to take the risk of deterioration in case it is in the course of transit. Number 6, duty to intimate the seller where he rejects the goods. Now in case the buyer is not happy with the goods or not happy with the sample of goods that he has been provided, it is the duty of the buyer to inform the seller that I am not happy with the quality of goods, I need a better quality of goods. The buyer, if he is going to remain silent and not inform the same to the seller about the quality or about the kind of goods he has been provided, and of course because he is not happy with the goods, he will not make the payment of the goods. The seller will keep waiting why the payment has not yet reached him. Then the seller was going to question the buyer why the payment has not come, and then the buyer is going to explain the entire story that he did not like the goods that it was shipped to him. So to avoid all that, it is the duty of the buyer, right, to accept the goods, or if he doesn't like, if he is going to reject the goods, it is his duty to intimate the seller. Is that clear? So that the seller would make necessary arrangements to pick up back the goods delivered and deliver him back the type of goods or the quality of goods that the buyer is demanding for. Is that clear? That's a 6th point, duty to intimate. Intimate means what? Communicate, inform the seller where he rejects the goods. Number 7, duty to take the delivery of goods. So once it has shipped or through waterways or airways, or once it has reached the buyer, it is the buyer's responsibility to receive the goods. Number 8, duty to pay prices according to the terms of the contract. So buyer, after receiving the goods, he cannot back out from the payment of price of the goods. He cannot tell if he is agreed for rupees 100 per unit or 100 per kg. Now he cannot bargain or have a argument saying that no, I will only pay 80 rupees per unit. That's not fair, right? Whatever buyer has agreed upon in the contract, mutually agreed and discussed upon, the payment must not be at default. It is the duty or the obligation of the buyer to pay the prices according to what? According to the terms of the contract. Now, if he says he has agreed upon rupees 100 per unit, and today in the market price, in the market, the price of that particular good is rupees 95. Now he cannot refuse saying that in the market it is 95, but I am paying to you rupees 100. I am paying 5 rupees extra, so I will refuse to pay 100. I will only agree to pay 95. That is not fair. It is the obligation. Buyer and seller have mutually agreed upon the consideration of the contract. Therefore, buyer in the last minute after receiving the delivery of the goods cannot back out or default from the payment. Buyer has to pay the price as agreed mutually on the terms of the contract. The 9th one, duty to pay damages for non-acceptance. So that is usual, correct? Now if the buyer, everything is whatever they have agreed upon, the quality, the quantity, the features of the contract, everything is correct, and the goods have been delivered on the right location in the reasonable business hours, and yet if the buyer in the last minute, if he is going to reject the goods or is not going to accept the goods delivered, then buyer must be ready to pay the damages to the seller. Is that clear? Buyer is obligated to pay for the damages, because if the same goods, if the seller would have sold to somebody else, he would have at least gained the price, he would have made some profit by investing so much of time and effort and delivering the goods and taking all the work. At the end, if the buyer backs out saying I am not going to accept the goods, then the buyer must be ready in order to pay for the damages that has been incurred by the seller because of him. Is that clear? These are the 9 different duties of a buyer. Duty to accept the goods, and pay for them in exchange for possession, duty to apply for delivery, duty to demand delivery at a reasonable hour, duty to accept the installment delivery and pay for it, duty to take risk of deterioration in the course of transit, to intimate the seller where he rejects the goods, duty to take the delivery of goods and to pay prices according to the terms of the contract, and duty to pay damages in case of non-acceptance of the goods by the buyer.